Skinwalker Ranch, also known as Sherman Ranch in Utah, has been the site of hundreds of paranormal events, including cattle mutilations, UFO sightings, animals 3 times their normal size, and many, many more. Join myself and Neil as we discuss one of the most intriguing otherworldly hotspots on the planet. Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a skeptical perspective, whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it? Welcome back to Aliens Explored. My name is Neil Kelly.
And I'm Stu Jackson.
And today we're going to be talking about the mystery of Skinwalker Ranch.
It's an exciting place. It's on my places to visit, except it's privately owned now, so I can't.
Yes, it was brought up by a millionaire, wasn't it? After Terry and Gwen Sherman fled the place in terror, it was bought up by Robert Bigelow, a billionaire property magnate. With a passion for space travel and the paranormal. Indeed,
and very appropriately so, it seems. So it was originally the Sherman Ranch. This is, of course, in Utah. So our British listeners, that's in America. I think most of our listeners are in America, so hopefully we'll probably have a better idea of where Utah is than certainly I do.
Right, so to be specific, it's 500 acres of northern Utah in a region known as the Uintah Basin? UINTAH, Uintah Basin.
Okay, I'll take your word for it, but if you really want to be specific, it's 512.
512 acres, right, okay.
If you're going to use the word specific, then.
Right. Just in case anyone wanted to head there. So, how come I never heard of this? I mean, I've heard of other places they reference, the Bermuda Triangle, Area 51, but apparently Skinwalker Ranch is kind of UFO, occult, paranormal central in this very paranormal part of the world.
It's a real hotbed of activity, it seems. As to why you've never heard of it, that's up there as one of life's great mysteries. I have my own theories about suppressions of information.
But I've never even heard of a skinwalker before, and even and that's I watch enough American horror movies. I mean, I think that would have been referenced at least once.
Well, skinwalkers go back to the Native Americans. I think it's the Navajo tribe. Yes. I mean, not that this particular ranch was anywhere near... Well, no, it was not too far from the Navajos, but it wasn't a Navajo area. But anyway, that's digressing a bit. But skinwalkers they're kind of like werewolves or witches. They're shape changers. They're people that change shape from Native American mythology. And one of the regular events that you've had at Skinwalker Ranch has been strange humanoid creatures.
As well as giant animals, giant wolves, which have carried off cattle.
Yeah, wolves 3 times the size of normal wolves. That's a big old wolf.
And apparently impervious to firearms.
Yeah, shot at, no effect. That's one of the events. But I mean, there's so many to choose from. So many events to choose from. So, coming back to a recent topic of discussion that we've had, crop circles. There's been spates of crop circles in the area, a lot of UFO sightings, but that whole area around is a hotbed of UFO activity. There's a quote from, so I've forgotten who, but there is a quote, a nice little quote. You can't throw a rock around here without hitting somebody who's been abducted, which is quite. You say about the wolves carrying off the cattle mutilations, which we covered in episode 6, of course, are a regular occurrence on Skinwalker Ranch, or have been in the past, particularly the bloodless surgical style of cattle mutilations. Sightings of all sorts of creatures, large humanoid creatures, all sorts, yeah. But the Shermans, yeah, they didn't own it for very long. They were so freaked out. I think they bought it kind of around the mid-90s, about 94, I think.
1994, it says, yeah.
Yeah, and they only owned it for 18 months before they sold it on again.
Now, this sounds like the plot of a Scooby-Doo story, except this time the bad guy, those meddling kids weren't around, and the bad guy got away with it. That they bought this ranch. They were terrified off of it, and it was bought up by a billionaire property magnate. Did he get it cheap? Was that how it works?
Well, I mean, this chap Bigler, I mean, he's got a particular interest in all things sort of UFO and alien and what have you. And I think, but my understanding is he bought it for that very reason. Now, this is, of course, where the story gets a bit tricky, because he spent quite a few years setting up lots of equipment, doing lots of studies, and whilst there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that he's come away with, I mean, he's managed to write a book out of it. It's a bloody expensive way of writing a book, to be honest.
But if you're a billionaire property magnate, you know...
Indeed.
What else are you going to do with all that money?
But they've not come away with any hard evidence, in spite of setting up lots of sort of equipment, and which is quite disappointing, really.
Well, there was some story about how their equipment keeps getting damaged. They come back and find the wires ripped out or otherwise broken.
Yeah. Now, it suggests to me an intelligence that doesn't want to be captured on film.
Or as a former retired, he's now a consultant with Bigelow's, is it the National Institute for Discovery Science, NIDS, NIDS, and one NIDS consultant, a retired Army intelligence officer, John Alexander, said in an interview that a precognitive sentient intelligence was at work on the ranch. So I guess that means it can see ahead. Does it? Precognitive. It has
precognitive.
Somehow predicting what the NIDS team were going to do next and scuppering their equipment accordingly. So I guess that's what precognitive sentient means.
Or does that mean it could just think ahead and plan ahead, rather than just living in the moment? I mean, I think we can argue that, cats and dogs are sentient, but they can't really think ahead.
It's just the precognitive bit. I mean, I know that a sentient intelligence would know what you were doing and be able to sabotage it.
Yeah. So what's meant by precognitive, listeners? Do message us and let us know. It could mean... sort of a paranormal predictive thing, or it could just mean that you can see what's going to happen from events.
Yeah. Equipment would mysteriously malfunction at critical moments. There were even cases of electronic equipment being physically mangled and shredded and wires ripped out.
I think the key thing there, though, is sentient. There's an intelligence at work. And here's the thing. So in ufology, we get this question a lot. Well, all right, if there's all these aliens, why don't they just pop and say hello? Maybe they don't want to be revealed to us. Maybe it's a slow process. I mean, these are all theories. I'm not suggesting I know the answer. But as a theory, maybe that's all it is. They don't want to be known at the moment. So any efforts to capture them on film are going to be fundamentally flawed. Except perhaps in a very controlled way.
Yeah, it's hard to know what to say about this because there's so much going on, isn't there? Because as soon as you try and explain away the lights in the sky, then someone will say, well, what about the crop circles? And as soon as you're trying to explain away the crop circles, someone's going to say, well, what about the cattle mutilations or the sight of these creatures? This one that grabbed a calf in its jaws. Terry Sherman fired at it with a handgun and then a rifle, and despite being hit, the creature didn't seem hurt and simply wandered away into the bushes. Its foul stench, like rotting flesh, stayed with the Shermans.
What about the large humanoid creature who just sat 20 yards away from Bigelow's researchers, just looking at them?
Yeah.
Some very, very weird things. Now, I mean, Bigelow is an interesting character in himself. He was actually employed by the Pentagon to do a report on UFOs. Worth noting. He's got an aviation company. But I think one of the biggest mysteries of all this is 2016, Bigelow sells Skinwalker Ranch. And he sells it to Adamantium Real Estate.
Which sounds like a front company, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? Now, for a long time, this has been a very mysterious, unknown entity. And, of course, a lot of theories have come forward as a result of that. But actually, I can tell you who is behind Adamantium Real Estate.
And who is that?
It's a chap called Brandon Fugal, or Fugal. I'm not entirely sure about pronunciation, but it's Fugal. He bought it in 2016. Now, this is where it starts to get really interesting for me. He is a tech investor. His job is to find new technologies, leading edge, cutting edge stuff, and invest heavily in it. That's his job. That's how he's made his millions. And in particular, he and his team have been known for working on gravity drives, which is very heavily associated with the UFO culture.
Yes, or reverse engineered UFO technology.
Indeed. So isn't it interesting that someone with, on the surface of it, absolutely no connection to owning ranches or things like that, would suddenly purchase it and then go dark?
I suppose if you wanted to set up your own research centre, a ranch is a good place as any, isn't it? Some if you wanted to be somewhere isolated, especially if it involved doing outdoor experiments, 512-acre ranch would be a good place to.
Oh, he's got no shortage of places to test. I mean, the guy's a multimillionaire, possibly billionaire.
But you'd want somewhere with open spaces, wouldn't you? You wouldn't be wanting a Manhattan apartment for that sort of thing, or an office block downtown Chicago. You would want somewhere out in the wild. but
but given its reputation and its history, it's not like this is going to go for a normal. There are vast swathes of land you could buy cheaper if you just wanted a large area. You know, this is a specific place with a specific history.
And that history didn't make it cheaper in the Scooby-Doo sort of scenario.
No, it wouldn't have done, not at all. I don't know how much it went for, I'll be honest, but yeah. But Fugal actually has had an interesting, going back to 2010, was when he first became aware of Skinwalker Ranch and started prodding around on it.
Started making overtures to...
And of course, for one of the most studied, scientifically studied paranormal hotspots on the planet, it's an odd choice. Or is it?
It is an odd choice, and that it was up for sale as well. I mean, didn't the government have something to say about it? And I suppose Area 51 was already a government site, wasn't it?
Area 51, yes, is a government-owned site, but yeah, it's just. I think when you're talking about this level of money, places don't necessarily have to go up for sale. You just walk in with your, and this is exactly how I'm picturing it, listeners, that you walk into a building with a large round bag of cash with several $1 billion in it and just plonk it on a table and say, I want to buy this. That's how it works, isn't it? That's finance.
Of course, yeah. Well, you wouldn't do it yourself. You just give it to you give it to the intern or the post room boys and give them a massive bag of money and come and buy this ranch.
Yes, yeah. Buy that for me.
So I mean, here we're not just talking about aliens or UFOs. We're also talking about all sorts of paranormal activity. We're getting into Bigfoot territory as well. That large humanoid figure you described had been referred to as the Sasquatch, which I believe is another name for Bigfoot.
It is, but why separate them out? Why? What makes us think that perhaps they might be completely separate fields?
Yeah, I mean, you could be in danger of just disappearing down a rabbit hole if you try and take it all as one unified thing, but it's also very difficult to look at each one in isolation because they're all happening together. Do the lights in the sky result in the crop circles, or do they result in the cattle mutilations, or the because some of these animals were actually animals on the ranch began to die in grotesque ways. Some of their dogs were seemingly incinerated in the night, while cows were found dismembered and cored out with the kind of surgical precision that ruled out attacks by coyotes. So
yeah, it's a weird place.
And in fact, the thing with these animal mutilations is you can't even see any purpose to it. It's not been eaten.
There's no purpose that we can discern. That's not to say that there's no purpose, just none that we can discern. But it certainly suggests an intelligence when you're talking about surgical precision. Incineration, for example, of the dogs, could be accidental. And I can see that as a possibility, but no, there's certainly an intelligence at work and at play here.
You have to wonder what would be whether it was accidental or whether like human trophy hunters, they just like killing things for fun.
Like Predator from the movies.
Well, there was a theory I saw somewhere that said, if we were visited by by aliens, they probably would be quite, as well as having superior technology to us, they would probably be quite aggressive and hostile and dangerous to us, because it's through being aggressive and having lots of wars and things that you develop this technology. Or through hunting, and animals that hunt, advance in technology.
That's an interesting one. I prefer to go with the Star Trek sort of thinking, which is that actually to evolve we all have to learn how to cooperate and work together,
But we had to get to that stage through. It's almost like you have to have all this war and conflict to get the technologies, and then when you're on the brink of destroying yourself with it, you have to find a way to live together. So, although in Star Trek it's a peaceful world, untroubled by any kind of strife, to get there, to get the technology to live the way they did, they had to have a lot of prior strife.
Right. So, to answer Paul Hardcastle's question then, war, what is it good for? Social development and evolution. Doesn't quite scan.
No, but that is a theory that any visitors from another dimension or from another planet would probably be dangerous to us. And
wouldn't carrying on, so to extend that theory a bit further, wouldn't carrying on down that path of aggression and violence ultimately lead to their own annihilation unless they evolve past it?
Are you talking about us now, or are you talking about other beings? We haven't figured that. Yeah, we haven't figured that out. We were bristling with nuclear weapons that could, you can't get to be elected prime minister in Great Britain unless you say that yes, you would be prepared to press that button and incinerate millions of people.
Oh yeah,
that's a kind of basic entry qualification, that preparedness to do that.
Yeah,
so, you
let's
could
not
say,
even go where poor Americans are at the moment.
I know. We feel for you, our American listeners.
We do.
Yeah, I think you're in for a rough ride. Indeed. Over the next few years.
Indeed, you either bow to the wishes of dictatorship, or things will be changed so that you have to bow to the wishes of dictatorship.
Yeah, let me be controversial here. I mean, America has spent decades overthrowing democracies, supposedly in the cause of democracy, overthrowing democracies and setting up tin pot dictatorships and causing enormous bloodshed in places like Chile, Vietnam, Iran. Well, that's a chicken that was bound to come home to roost one day. So now you're experiencing it happening to you.
Yes. But we feel for you.
We feel for you.
We really do feel for you. We have plenty of homegrown problems here in the UK as well. Oh my goodness! Don't we just?
Yes, we don't offer ourselves up as an example.
There's a theory that our royal family are in fact lizard aliens from another galaxy.
Yeah,
and I really wish that were the case, because...
And see, that's the danger of, I think if with someone like Skinwalker Ranch, where you're looking at a whole plethora of paranormal or extraterrestrial activity, and you're kind of coming up with a story that incorporates it all, well, then it's going to start incorporating things like David Icke with his theories about lizard people. It's going to, you're starting getting into the QAnon and all that. You're getting into their territory. All sorts of conspiracy theories.
Well, but a place where you do have so many, so on the surface of it, disparate things happening. Well, it's a causal sort of relationship, clearly.
Yeah.
Behind it all.
But I mean, going back to these mutilated animals, if you posit the idea that these aliens just kill them for fun whenever they feel like it, just a sort of trophy hunt or sadism or whatever. They've kind of worked out that they can kill an animal without too much consequence, without too much of a reaction from the human community. Obviously, the owners will be pissed off. They might call the local sheriff's department in. The sheriffs will sort of look at it and scratch their heads and say, well, yeah, that's really odd. Let us know if it happens again and file it away. And that's it. If they must have worked out if they killed a human, there would be a more significant response. But even so, they you know, if they're skinwalkers, if they can travel between dimensions, they're not going to be too bothered by a human response. And of course, you have to ask, why here? Why do they pick these spots? What's so attractive to these particular places?
Well, that I think just speaks to our lack of understanding of our own planet. You know, I mean, we talk about things like ley lines and convergences of energy on the planet, which are detectable. We know where these things are, and it's a consistent thing. It's not like it's changing. We just don't know what it means. So perhaps somewhere like Skinwalker Ranch is a convergence of ley lines or something like that. I haven't seen anything to do with ley lines about Skinwalker Ranch, so that's a pure out the air theory, but as an idea. But we're also so you just did the thing there where you mentioned aliens. We've talked about crop circles, UFOs, castle mutilations, overgrown animals, humanoid creatures. We haven't actually mentioned aliens. Because, as I think we've been saying since day one, UFOs, and we talk about, I like this word, otherworldly, because we don't know that they are aliens from another planet. We've no idea of that. We've no evidence of it. It could be a different answer. And I wonder if a convergence of all these different things coming together is almost sort of evidence that it isn't necessarily extraplanetary. That it's something that shares this world with us, but is hidden.
If you imagine our reality as that what we perceive as reality, as solid things, aren't really matter. I mean, if you look at an atom, and matter is only a very, very small part of the atom. Someone, I think it's Bill Bryson, said it's the amount of matter in an atom is equivalent to a fly in a cathedral. It's that sort of proportions. That actually our reality is kind of energy reduced to a low vibration. And that's what we perceive. But could it be like a radio channel where if you have the technology, you can kind of turn the knob and change the reality? You can suddenly step into another, you're suddenly in a different world, just as you've, in the same way of changing radio or TV stations. Is that and if they figure that out, if they live side by side with this, but in a different dimension, or on a different wavelength, a different energy vibration, and they can somehow travel through, then could it be that while they travel through, there's beings from other dimensions that come through sort of by accident? That, actually a sophisticated being comes through to study us, but leaves the door open to a skinwalker or a cattle ripper or whatever. Just kind of follow him through, and then he has to kind of round him up and take him back.
That's a definite theory. So to summarise them, is that where you sit with Skinwalker Ranch? That perhaps it's a doorway to another reality.
I like the idea of doorways to other realities. I like the idea that there are infinite dimensions.
Being able to get out of this one.
In another dimension, I'm still at junior school. Because that's where I am. What happens when we die? Do you just start reliving the thing? Do you just pick up where you left off in another dimension and carry on with it, and live the whole thing over and over again, infinitely? That is another bigger question. What happens when we die? If we live through infinite dimensions? I think with Skinwalker Ranch, it's just oh God, I just don't know. This is all just, it's all too much. It's overwhelming, isn't it? But then there's shadowy human activity around it as well that makes me suspicious. So, yeah, I'm hesitant to come up with a unifying theory about what it all means, because then you are disappearing down the rabbit hole and getting into all sorts of crazy stuff.
Indeed. But do you think, so to kind of force you into do you think it's otherworldly involvement, or is it all humans?
I think there's something definitely that we don't understand, whether it is just natural phenomena that we haven't quite got to grips with, or whether it is actually otherworldly, as well as some suspicious human activity going on as well.
Well, indeed, and that's pretty much where I sit as well. Perhaps on the sort of leaning heavier on the otherworld. I'm absolutely convinced that there is otherworldly intention there, and it's funny you say about its grand unifying theory. I think if there is a unifying theory to be found, places like Skinwalker Ranch is where you're going to find it, 100%. And I do find involvement of people like this Brandon Fugel, and adamantium real estate. I think. Oh gosh, that just seems so suspicious to me. A tech investor suddenly buying it up.
Wasn't adamantium some kind of power source in some sci-fi movie?
It's in the Marvel magazines. It's what Wolverine's bones are coated in.
Right, adamantium. I thought I knew I'd heard of it somewhere. So you'd think if you were going to set up a mysterious shell corporation, you'd give it a fairly bland name that wouldn't attract anyone's attention, wouldn't you?
But apparently he is a bit of a science fiction fan as well. This chap.
But the idea of giving it the blandest of bland possible names. I like the idea. There was a guy who was an anarchist in pre-First World War Bohemia, called Yaroslav Hasek, and he wrote a book, the Good Soldier Sveik, which is very much part of the Czech identity. If you go to Prague, there'll be little figurines and pictures of the Good Soldier Sveik everywhere. But he belonged to an anarchist outfit, which carried out bombings and assassinations in that sort of turbulent period, and they called themselves the Party of Moderate Progress within the bounds of the law.
Nothing screams more suspicious than
nothing to see.
Nothing to see here. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, there we are, listeners. What do you think about Skinwalker Ranch? Is it one of the strangest places on the planet, or is there something far more mundane about it all that we're all missing? Do message us, let us know one way or the other. Don't forget you can find us on Twitter and on Facebook, of course on YouTube as well. Just search Aliens Explored or visit us at aliensexplored.com. Don't forget to join us next time when we'll be having a look into, pardon the pun, the Hollow Earth theory. Do you see what I did there?
We'll play the Bernard Cribbins digging a hole with it. Hole in the ground theme.
Fantastic. So until then, keep watching those skies. And that's it from me.
And that's it from me. See you soon.
See you next time. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored or visit us on aliensexplored.com.